Why do some architecture presentations end like this? And some end like this? Today I'm going to be talking about 4 key components to a compelling architecture presentation. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Dami and I'm a licensed architect in Vancouver, BC. So this is a new section of the channel called the Presentation Corner, where I'm going to give you some tools and strategies to create a compelling architecture presentation. I'm sure you've seen instances where good projects get bad reviews because of poor presentations, and bad projects come alive because of a really good presentation. A lot of times, if it is a really bad project, it's pretty hard to hide. But there are so many ways to structure a presentation to focus on your strengths and not the weak areas that you didn't spend too much time on. I also kind of believe that architects need to become better communicators inside school, but also outside of school. Architecture is not just about the construction of buildings, but it's inspiring the world with our ideas. And I think that when we can share ideas and communicate them better to the wider public, we can get better buildings, we can have better communities, and we can have a better profession. So today I'm going to be covering 4 key aspects of a presentation that I always try to think about before I even start putting together my slides. So I've split up the video into 4 sections. First one, concept wrapping, how to wrap the presentation around your concept or the problem that you're trying to solve. And number 2, continuous engagement. And I'll give you some tools you can use to keep your audience constantly engaged and not bored throughout the presentation. And then number 3 will be comprehensiveness, how to make sure that your audience is not just engaged, but they're understanding every point you're talking about. And then number 4, satisfaction. This is the end result, the combination of all of these points, and it's kind of the gut feeling about your project. But I think ultimately it's the difference between a really memorable presentation and a average presentation. So I'll give you an example with one of my projects. This project is called Symbiosis, and I won the TD Bank Award from the Toronto Society of Architects. And what's interesting about this project is that I never really showed a rendering of what the building looks like from the outside. And it's a project that won, like, pretty much because of its concept. So the project brief was to create an office tower of the future, but not too far in the future. It was the office of 2020, which is now. So before even starting, I'm explaining the project with a series of very simple diagrams that explain the concept behind the building. So basically I wanted to create a unique environment throughout the building, but just recognize that, you know, creating a unique condition for every floor is going to be really, really, really friggin' expensive. And if we ended up doing that, the cost of renting a floor would be extremely expensive, and so it would only be rented out to super high income companies. And so what I did is, instead of changing the size or the shape of each floor plate, I changed the size of the atrium. So yeah, that's what this diagram is showing. So continuously changing size of the atrium throughout the building. And then the changing size of the atrium alters the usage of the regular floor plates. And therefore, a variety of firms and organizations can choose a floor that is best suited to their functional and economic needs. And then so that's a site diagram showing how the building is connected to the rest of the city. And this is another site diagram showing how the building is connected to an underground path network. This building was based in Toronto, by the way. And in Toronto, because it gets down to like negative 30 degrees, there is a very extensive underground network. And so the basement floor of this building is connected to it's called the path. And so people can come up to the community space in this building from the path network. And so here I'm showing the elevations, sections, and the floor plans, but I'm showing it in a way that reinforces the concept. So based on this section drawing that we have here, you can see that by changing the size of the atrium, you can alter the usage of the floor plate. So this one can be split into 2 small firms. This can be used by 1 large organization. This one also split into 2. And then on this side, I actually have the floor plan where you can see how the space is being used. And then on the next page, I will have the renderings for each floor plan. And then we have the section of the ground floor, which is, this is all commercial retail, so it's open to the public. And then the basement floor is the floor that's connected to the path network. And then all of this becomes an indoor garden so that people can use the space during the winter as well. And so right below the section, I will have a diagram. So this is a public-private diagram showing the red section as the private and all of the blue section as the public. And so this is directly connected to my concept of symbiosis, which means symbiosis means a mutually beneficial relationship. And then on next page, I'll have a rendering showing this fountain detail. And then on the next page, I'll have another section, another orthographic drawing. But I will have another diagram showing how the building is connected to the network on the ground, on the basement level, and how the public and private are intermingled together. And then on the next page, I'll have a rendering of the garden space. And then another one is by interjection. So you interject your concept every like 2 or 3 slides. Okay, so this is a slightly different example. It's some of the slides from my thesis project. So this project was a little bit unique because I had 5 different buildings within one project, and each building was addressing like a unique concept. And instead of presenting the building through drawings, I actually presented it through an experiential section. So this is like one of the buildings in the project. And so I would walk people through the space, and then I would change the background color into white. And here I'm actually going back to the concept, going out of the building, going back to the concept, and giving a brief description of what concept this building is resolving. And of course, I'm using similar graphics to what we were seeing in the building, right? And then another example with another building is, once again, I walk people through the building through an experiential section, and then I briefly come back to the concept that this building is trying to resolve. And then once again, I jump back into the concept. So yeah, this is another example of how you can wrap the concept around your project. So a lot of students in their early years think that they have to present the building. So they will spend a lot of time talking about the plans. Here's the section, here's the elevation, because those are the requirements. Typically in a brief, it'll say, okay, you have to present the orthographic drawings through plan, section, elevation, renderings, blah, blah, blah. But you have a pretty limited amount of time in your presentation, right? So you just want to show the parts of your building that's essential to your concept. And there's always a Q&A afterwards. And so if you want, you can clarify those details later. So the key difference is using your drawings not to show your building, but using it to show your concept. We all have a very short attention span. Everyone feels like they have more important things to do. And, even if it's your jury who has to be there, they're just not going to react favorably to a project if they're bored. And also, you're not really respecting their time and presence if you're boring them, right? So in that time span of 5 to 20 minutes, you need to keep your audience engaged and keep them focused for the entirety of the presentation. And while you're presenting some very complex concepts. Also, when you're presenting, you kind of have to think about yourself as like this person that's putting on a show. That's going to be reflected in your posture, the way that you're talking, the way you're gesturing your hands, and you just really want to have control over the room. So I've even seen people go and direct exactly where they want people to sit. If you feel like it's going to benefit you to have people sit on the floor, then you make sure you go and arrange the room so that everyone sits on the floor as soon as they come in. One of the ways I like to create engagement is through visual continuity. So this is a really simple example. I actually showed this in my other video about the border crossing in the DMZ, but see how the diagrams all connect visually. I'm using some of the same elements so that it's very easy for them to understand what I'm talking about. And then another example. So in this one, I had a lot of complex cultural concepts that I had to go over before I even started talking about my building. So here, I'm using this circle as a tool, and I'm showing how these different elements are connected. So I had 4 concepts I wanted to address: anti-library, categorization, speed reading, and speed and distraction. And I had to explain different concepts within that category. And so by just scrolling through these images in these 4 points, the audience is able to understand that, okay, this derive is in the category of speed and distraction and the labyrinth. And they can see how that connects to the other category, speed and reading. So if you have a bunch of different concepts that you're addressing, it's a really good way for you to create context. It helps them situate what you're talking about in the wider context of the project. And so this is how I even talk about my site. And also I use very little text in my presentations, as you can see, because everyone understands visuals more clearly, and I will be reinforcing the visuals with what I'm saying. And then there's visual continuity with images as well, right? Just using the same row of photos, showing that you're progressing in space. And then another strategy I like to use is tension and release. So same example as before, series of very dark black and white photos, and then you have release with a bright rendering. Another example would be, this is another experiential section from my thesis project. And then, so I'm walking them through the building through a series of sections and renders, and then I'll release with a rendering. So the third component to a compelling presentation is comprehensiveness, meaning the audience has a really good understanding of all the concepts that you talked about at the end of the presentation. So I think one of the most important things is to provide context throughout your presentation. So architecture presentations are typically very complex and sometimes very long. And you probably have a pretty good idea of what you're talking about because you've been working on the project for a long time. But, sometimes even the smartest people can't follow what you're talking about. Sometimes you'll be talking about a space and one of the jury members will go like, is that over here? And you're like, no, it's actually over here. To me, that's like one of the worst things that could happen in a presentation, because at that point you've kind of lost your credibility and your ability to walk people through the space, and you realize that they didn't really have an idea of what you were talking about. So one of the ways to avoid that is to make it as easy as possible for them to follow along and keep giving them visual cues of where they are in the presentation. Okay, so I'll give you another example here. This is another project. It was a renovation of a brutalist building. And so we were doing some like exterior and interior retrofits. And so you can see here that I am basically like half of the page is taken up with the plan and the other half is with renderings. And I have these view cones as I walk them through the presentation, showing exactly where they are in the building. And as you go through the presentation, you don't just have to show renderings, right? You can also show details and axos that are in that particular space. And then some renderings, and then you'll have your like moment of release with a big section. So I'll go through the space and then show them, oh, and in this space, I have details that look like this. So that's one of the examples. And then another example, I showed you this before. And so this is a project where I didn't really walk them through the building through my drawings. I used an experiential section to walk them through the building. And I had printouts of the orthographic drawings so that they can kind of refer back to it as I'm talking. This project was composed of like 4 little buildings. And so what you can see is in the corner over there, I had a little key plan showing where we are in the building. And I kept the key plans there even as we were going through the concepts, because I really want to treat the audience as if they're like really stupid. I want to make it super, super, super obvious for them where we are in the building and what I'm talking about. And then another example is like if you just want to show an exterior of your building and show them how your building reacts to the sun throughout the day. You can do that as well by, like, what I did is I just highlighted the areas of the building that we're focusing on and then did a close-up of that area. So a satisfying presentation comes full circle. So what you present at the beginning of the presentation is reinforced over and over again throughout the project. And the concept builds and develops throughout the presentation. And in the end, it's fully reinforced. It leaves the audience with a sense of awe or learning something new. So in order for a project to be satisfying, the audience first, they need to be engaged throughout the journey and they have to fully understand all the concepts. A satisfying ending has like a wow moment. So you can end with like a money shot. A good presentation feels good, and that's the thing that's going to make your presentation memorable. So those are some of the key elements that I like to think about before I even start putting together a presentation. I hope you guys found this helpful. We have another video where I talk about how you can present case studies in a way that can help you defend your ideas. I will be making more videos like this on presentation techniques. So if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.